I haven't even started it yet, but there is a
Oh,
delay.
okay, that must be it. But there must be some kind of delay anyway.
There is. I've explained this to you before.
You've explained it to me before. Sure, you have. I don't think you have.
Okay, I have. There we go. Okay,
But
there,
it's
we're live now.
okay. I'll take your word for it. It doesn't mind. The phone doesn't mine doesn't say because I got this alleged delay I've been hearing about that you talk about.
Well, because there is a delay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, whatever.
Yep, so we are live.
Whatever. Are you sure?
Hmm.
Okay. Oh, there it is. It's so funny. Every time we do this, this price starts the same way. Me going, are we? Okay, there
Yep.
it is. All right, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, Mayor.
Okay.
I am at a loss with this one, so I can figure this stupid thing out. Yeah. I guess I do need one of those little things you keep talking about to hold your phone.
Yeah, it's really convenient.
I don't even know what it even is.
It's just a phone case I got.
Oh, aren't you special?
So a thing on the back that you can prop it up and all that. So
Oh,
nice.
wow,
Morning.
okay.
Morning, Barbara. Morning,
Oh,
Jordan.
oh, yeah. Well, there's all kinds of special witchcraft things you have that I don't have, but that's okay.
Morning, Ski.
Skis on. Skis on.
Hmm.
Very cool.
That anniversary of
Yeah,
Fredericksburg is coming up soon.
it's coming up like tomorrow.
Yep, tomorrow.
Don't you know anything?
Trust me, it's a
Yeah,
day I don't forget.
yeah, that is true. That is true. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna warm up today. It's weird. It's like 60 degrees out today, but I'm like perma cold. I think
Mhm.
probably
Because it's
something in
winter. I'm
friggin'
just kind of babbling right now.
yeah. That's okay. We're gonna get going. It takes a little bit of time to get the machine going. But yeah, you mentioned tomorrow is the anniversary of the Battle of
Hmm.
Fredericksburg. Speaking of ski, so that's a big deal. Hopefully
Yeah.
the town is doing something cool. They're gonna just miss the weekend. It's too bad that it
Yeah.
isn't Friday going into
Well,
Sunday. But
sometimes they
that's
do like events on like, leading up, like on the weekend of or something like that, so that people can get to them.
yeah, yeah, that's cool. We do appreciate people jumping on day late. We had some technical difficulties
Yeah.
with our internet service, who decided to cut the internet for some kind of thing yesterday morning at the last minute. And
But
we
all
could
is
have certainly
fine.
tried to go with just the data, but it probably would have been choppy. So we figured the
Yeah,
hell with it.
I
We'll
don't
do it
like
today.
I had to tether my phone the other day at the library, and that's always a sketchy thing.
Yeah, then we got to do some shenanigans yesterday, do some stuff, watch some football,
Yeah.
do some family stuff. It was a good little day. Hopefully people have a good weekend.
Mm.
Hopefully people have some winding up for this stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, so the episode that we're going to be doing on Granbury, we're going to do this coming week because
Yeah.
someone's schoolwork is apparently is too much for her to
I
handle. So
I
she,
have my final project tomorrow, my Killer Angels project, so that's the final
yeah,
part of that.
and I'll be glad when this one's over.
Mm.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think it's good. I think it's. I'm looking forward to it. You probably put the pictures up. You've done a lot of cool stuff. So you did some
Yeah,
good
I've had to
videos
do
and
like,
made
so I
some.
mean, not to bore everybody, but I had to do this project where I told the story of the publishing of the Killer Angels, but then I had to kind of go into what my instructor calls fantasy land and tell the story as if it was being published in 2023. So I get to like, you know, tell the publishing story of it in 2023. I designed a cover for it. I've designed like stuff that I would do for a social media campaign because I'm acting as kind of the editor for this. I've made recommendations on, changes to make to the manuscript. So I've done things like add in Elizabeth Thorne as a character. And
That's pretty cool.
I've said that I said that Elizabeth Thorne needs to be the last chapter in the book. As it stands, the original novel it has Chamberlain as the last chapter, but I said Elizabeth Thorne needs to be the last chapter because then that kind of shows that, even though the armies have left, Gettysburg has left an impact on this community, and it's going to be her like digging the graves when she's 6 months pregnant. And then I put in Meade as a character as well, and he's going to come in at the cemetery gatehouse, which is what happened in history. In the book, as we know, he arrives and talks to Hancock. So I've said that needs to be changed. And then I did a few other fun things too, but it was really fun. Like just going, like, I mean, I honestly would not change anything about the book, but it was fun kind of going into that and looking at it from a 2023 perspective. Like, it was good. But yeah, Elizabeth Thorne and Meade are my two favorite things that I did.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're having some fun with it, and so I think you'll get to do that. Hopefully, there's a way you can kind of present your little show. So I don't know how you could do it on this thing, but I think people might get a kick out to see some of the the alternate stories.
Yeah, it's good if it's an
that.
alternate telling and what you would do and all that. And like I've made it, like I've done it so that there's going to be a Netflix series about it, like an 8-part Netflix series. So I've had fun like casting that, you know, with actors from today. Although I'm struggling with who should play Robert E. Lee, because I can't get out of my head, you know, Martin Sheen. He was so good as Robert E. Lee that it's like, how do you possibly replace that?
I like Sheen. I think Sheen is good in that role. I think he's pretty good. I mean, obviously, you're not really remaking the movie, so it's not like you got to really worry about. But whatever
It's
you
just
want
fun to think. It's just fun to think about. That's all.
Yeah, that's good. We'll look forward to seeing that. So yeah, so good to see people on.
Yeah,
on
sorry for babbling about my project, everybody. Barbara's got a question about Fredericksburg. She said, speaking of Fredericksburg, how were those pontoon boats secured or weighted down so they didn't move?
Oh, the infamous pontoon boats at
Oh
Fredericksburg,
God,
the ones
the
that actually
pontoon
showed
boats.
up. Well, they would be weighted down. So you put the boats down, you put a platform over it, and it kind of all holds it into place. Some of them did float away, though. I mean, some of them did move. We talked specifically about the Gettysburg campaign, and in Williamsport, when they put the pontoons on at Williamsport, when they came back, they got disrupted and floated away, and they had to move and had to reset them up again. So they were all weighted down. There was nothing much more to it than that. But some of them did move. They did get, so, can you imagine coming back and you find out your friggin' bridge is gone and floated down the river? Yeah. No, it's a great piece of engineering technology if you think about it. They put when Lee crossed, we began the Gettysburg campaign, they put the pontoons down, and then they weren't there when they came back. Some of them were destroyed by Union, but a lot of them they just kind of move. They do, but they are weighted down.
Oh, Miranda just said story time with Mayor on evening Zoom, Killer Angels and Carol Cocktails night.
Well, yeah, probably should do that. Since you signed me up for that Masonic thing on this, I'm supposed to sign you up for that thing. Apparently,
you were the one that said. I asked you. People were asking you when we posted the pictures of you doing your Masonic presentation. People were like, "Is this going to be available for like? Can you do this on a roundtable?"
Yeah, I don't know.
You people? I think you should. You just have to kind of change it.
Yeah, there's to be some things have to change on it, but it's okay. Yeah, what? How the hell not? Why the hell not? So we should do something like that. Killer Cocktails. God.
Oh, Ryan's on here, our British listener. More.
No.
Good afternoon, Ryan.
Speaking of Ryan, so Ryan, I don't know if you know this, Ryan, but next weekend is the anniversary of the Boston Tea Party. It's 250th anniversary. So I know it didn't really end too well for you guys, but we are going to do a reenactment. Speaking of the Freemasons, if we're going to be doing a reenactment of the Boston Tea Party next weekend in Boston, so we'll be doing that. So we'll be thinking of that. We'll maybe dump a little Boston Harbor tea in the water. A little bit. We'll just yell for Phil Kearney and we'll throw it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. No, but that's pretty neat though. That's pretty fun to do that stuff. But but your thing will be pretty cool. You should do it because she's being modest about it, but she spent a lot of time on this, and she has a new cover of the book, and she's got a whole new story. It's like you wrote a whole new book of Killer Angels with Elizabeth Thorne and Howard. He's going to be in it.
Yeah, and Howard's in it, but Howard's in it from the perspective of Elizabeth Thorne because she would be in it. You're going to get that evening, the dinner that they had there, so you're going to have Howard there. When Meade arrives, he's going to be meeting Howard and Sickles and Slocum, which is how it happened in history. It's a bit different in the book, and obviously like Shara has to take those, he took licenses with it, but it's actually, pretty true to the telling of Gettysburg, of the Battle of Gettysburg, I think. But I wanted to have more of he's the civilian in it as well, the townspeople and the impact that it had on them. And Elizabeth Thorne is the perfect representative for that, I think. Yeah,
I would agree with that. So yeah. So this is kind of no format with this, I guess. We didn't do an episode this week. We just kind of shoot the shit. But yeah, if I'm glad, it's amazing it's already December. It's sad when you kind of factor in your calendar by battles, right? It's already Fredericksburg season. Pretty soon it'll be Stones River season. And all over again. But Fredericksburg is a great battle. And I mean, we've said this before. I think after the town of Gettysburg, I think Fredericksburg is my favorite Civil War town. Because it's so cool. It just is. And people like to complain about Maurice Heights and the urban renewal and all that stuff and developments, all that stuff. But it's still cool. You can still go and people still visit. And it's an important battle when you look at, basically 120,000 Union guys up against
Yeah.
about 80,000 Confederate guys. And and it's one of those battles, Burnside gets a lot of shit for, and he ultimately gets canned for it, that and the Mud March later. But, he had a good plan. And we were joking about the pontoon boats, but if those boats had arrived on time, how history could have changed. I mean, the reality was Lee wouldn't have fought at Fredericksburg. He would have fallen back towards Richmond, be battled somewhere else in between. But yeah, that goes to show how government red tape can really, put a cramp in your dick, man.
Well, Burnside definitely ran into it. And I mean, I think I talked about this last week, but I was reading over some of Howard's letters from around the time of Fredericksburg. And he talks about just kind of the chaos around, when they were finally building the pontoons. He talks about, he's writing this to his wife, and he's telling her, yeah, and then our men started building the pontoons, but then the Confederate sharpshooters started shooting at them, and then they really struggled with it. And I guess I think it was some of Howard's guys were like, well, we'll just go across in a boat and we'll get rid of those sharpshooters. And that's what they did. They rowed across and they got rid of them, and they were able to finish building the boats.
Yeah, and when you look at Fredericksburg too, people who don't study the Civil War really really closely is, or maybe do a little bit, but not really in depth like a lot of people here. You still had those grand divisions back then.
Yeah,
you
the
didn't
Army
have
of
the
the
Corps.
Yeah, the Army of the Potomac was very, like, it was structured very differently. And obviously, as we all know, like, Hooker is going to take over for Burnside, and he really, like, he takes what McClellan had done, which was really good. And he just kind of builds upon it and gives it, then you have like the First Corps, Second Corps, Third Corps, 11th Corps, 12th Corps, all that. And then you get the Corps badges, which were originally, I think, came from Kearny. That was his idea.
So it was all different how it was, but you're talking about the right, you guys like Bull Sumner commanding the right Grand Division. You had Hooker, you mentioned, do the center,
Yeah.
and Franklin did the left, and then you have those remnants of the corps all built in, but it's a totally different structure with that. You got a Doubleday and Reynolds and Baldy Smith and all these guys you associate with different things. They're all part of this, and you wonder if the structure had been a little bit different then, it might have been a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Howard's going to be in that right division with Sumner. He's going to be with them, and along with some other people there. And but it's interesting how they did it and how the structure changed. And we've talked a lot about Hooker and had fun with old Joe Hooker, a good mass guy, Mary. But what he did to really kind of restructure the army there, not just with the corps and all that stuff, but just with the better supplies, the food, what he did with the artillery, what he did with a lot of helping up the Bureau of Military Information, all the stuff he did. He's kind of a punchline, kind of like McClellan is, right? With a lot of people. But when you really get into it, you realize how important that was. And that army is the one that Meade's going to take at Gettysburg, which is kind of already in pretty good shape and set up. I know there's some different people taking over different places, but the army that's going to take place for that Gettysburg campaign, the rest of 63 and 64, is created by Hooker, who took that and built on what McClellan ultimately did.
Yeah.
Right. And so you got some guys in the middle like Burnside and guys like that. But really it's McClellan, Hooker, and Meade who really did a lot of that heavy lifting and really helped go forward with that. That's why when people rip on guys like that, and people rip on Meade,
and I don't get the Meade hate at all, but I mean, I find, like, just what you see on some of these freaking Facebook Civil War sites is there's this very much like there's this McClellan's bad, Hooker's bad, like, people just some, like, people will just rip on McClellan and say, like, I saw one comment, and MJ's on here, she'll know what I'm talking about. Someone said he was the worst thing ever in an American army, and I'm like, whoa, that's really a stretch.
Who's this, McClellan now?
Yeah, McClellan. Remember, I read you the comment.
Yeah,
like, McClellan was the worst person ever to command an army, and I'm like, what?
You could do a little good social experiment if you go on any of the Facebook pages or Twitter, what the hell freaking Twitter's called now, and you go up there and just say, someone says, list your top 3 Union generals. I'll put McClellan in the top 3 and just sit back.
People will lose their minds.
What the study about it is you can tell who studies who or reads or it doesn't study at all based on their responses. right? And McClellan's one of them, certainly, and so is Hooker, and it is the Confederate guys too. And there's people, Bragg is one that quickly comes to mind. But that's the thing with this. And we were saying last week is some books coming out, some modern books that kind of maybe throwing a little mud in the water a little bit of some of these guys. But really, it's just kind of creating an awareness to academics that have come later who dispute some of the old works, and people sometimes don't like to be untaught and retaught again.
Yeah, they don't.
And we know a lot of people like that.
And Ryan said Twitter is now called the 10th Corps, or X for short.
I dump my Twitter page. Twitter sucks. I dump that.
too.
We saw the podcast one. We just do that just to be for whatever. But Twitter, honest to God, is the goddamn worst. It really is.
Yeah, MJ just said she got so much grief for posting about McClellan, and she did. She posted about McClellan, and people just gave her grief over it. And they're so quick to say, like, if someone says they like McClellan, like, people just will be like, he sucks. Why would you say that? It's like, why don't you just give the person a chance to talk about why they are saying this about McClellan?
If people want to, if you want to go online, or if you get a chance to see Tom Clemens speak, he's a historian from Maryland, and I don't want to say he's pro McClellan, but he's kind of in the middle. He tells it the way it is. He calls balls and strikes, pretty evenly, and he really opens the door to a lot. Matt Borders is another one.
Yeah.
Right. But Racino wrote that book recently, and Gene Thorpe.
Gene Thorpe. Yeah.
He's that's like the Daryl Hall and John Oates. I always forget the other one, but Gene Thorpe. But they wrote that book on that, and really the McClellan stuff is really, and we've said this before, it didn't come out till he ran for election. And when you look at the history, and everyone talks about Lost Order 191, right? And all that stuff. But there was a writer named William Swinton for one of the New York papers.
Yeah.
And he carried a raging hate on for George McClellan. Mm-hmm. He just did. And so he wrote a lot of the stuff from Lost Order 191, literally made up sources. You want to talk about fake news? This was it. He made up stuff. But the problem was it stuck. And it went on and on and on. And so when he ran for president against Lincoln, they used this to help besmirch him. That's a good word for you, Mary, right? And then it ends up getting worse and worse and worse. And somehow, like a parasite, it just stuck. The other thing, we go with McClellan again, right? Is you hear a lot about the anti-McClellan people about he gave away Harper's Ferry. He just let Lee take it. Okay. And that's another thing, Dixon Miles is in charge of that. He screws that whole thing up. But here's the thing about it. Okay. McClellan was not in charge of Harper's Ferry.
No.
It was a guy named Wool who reported directly to Halleck. Yeah. So even if, and here's the cool thing about it too, McClellan actually gave a suggestion to Halleck that they should probably withdraw from Harper's Ferry because it's unsustainable. Yeah. Halleck kind of ignored it, but he didn't have the ability or the orders or the jurisdiction to pull them out because it was another general, John Wool, who commanded Harper's Ferry. It wasn't even McClellan. So when you hear people talk about it, it's so easy to debunk, but people don't want to hear it. They want to hear what they want to hear.
Because they go by what Stephen Sears has written. As you said, it was very media driven back in the day, just like stuff happens with the media now. It was happening back in the Civil War. And I don't think, sometimes we don't think of it that way, but that's exactly what was happening. Jaron said that Little Mac is one of his favorite generals to study. He's a remarkable individual, intelligent, and had a brilliant military mind. Ryan said, I got drunk and volunteered to give a talk next year about Hooker in the West, calling it Hooker Redeemed.
Well, that'll be an interesting group of people. You better say Joseph Hooker, Ryan. Who knows who you're going to get to show up for that one.
Hooker Redeemed.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Frank said he's definitely opened up more about McClellan. Still thinks he was pompous and too cautious, but he was a good organizer and liked by his men. After
he's definitely pompous, but then again, you're not going to get to that level unless you are. You could pick any of these guys who are pompous. Meade, any of them. Shall I say Lincoln? They all were, right?
Yeah, and they were all saying stuff in letters that was not meant for public consumption.
But here's the thing about the cautious thing, and that's the cautious thing is the thing that I kind of question sometimes, because you're only as good as the information you have. Okay, so we talked a lot about the Magruder thing at Yorktown. Okay,
Mhm.
yes, he got played, but he's getting on constant intel from people like, you know, um, Darius Couch, people like that who are telling him that there are hundreds of thousands of Rebs just over the border in Maryland and Virginia
Yeah.
who this big plan D-Day like assault. They're all going to go all in, and he's trying to get confirmation from this. He's also under the orders to protect Baltimore, protect Washington at all
Yeah.
costs. So now he's told to protect Washington, defend Baltimore. Why Baltimore? Whatever. But
Yep.
he's going to defend both of them, right? And also, by the way, you got to make sure he doesn't get into Pennsylvania. Oh, and by the way, you're coming off of Second Manassas, and you just
Yep.
got astroglided by Lee. Okay, so now you're gonna go, and this is all going on in real time, right?
Yeah.
So it's all happening quickly. Early September 5th, everything kind of gets going with this.
Yeah.
So he's got to sit. He's like trying to play, like asteroids, trying to blow up all the shit, or one of the stupid video games. But this is all, and he's getting information from all these different people. So of course he's going to be cautious, because if he moves towards Pennsylvania, he's leaving his queen on guard in Washington.
Yeah.
So he's got to leave men there. If he protects them, then Lee goes into Pennsylvania. So you're damned if you do it, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
And in real time, it's impossible. Go try to figure this one out. Go down to the pizza place, get yourself a piece of pizza, Mary, sit under a hornet's nest, hit it with a bat, and sit there and eat with the hornets flying around you. Okay? That's kind of what he's trying to do. And he's getting all this different conflicting stuff. So what does he try to? So what does he do though? He does all of it. He moves the chess pieces in a way to guard Baltimore, guard Washington, until Lee finally shows his cards. Then he brings in people. Oh, and by the way, I want Dixon Miles, Harper's Ferry guys, right? And I don't know, Davy. That's what he gets from Washington. Finally, Halleck realizes when he finally lets the info sink in from McClellan to finally retreat them out of there, which gives up but it ends up getting pounded. You get the whole Harper's Ferry cowards thing, all that stuff goes down. But this is the reality of this. So I don't think any general had to deal with more during the war at one time than McClellan, because don't forget, he just took over.
Yeah.
The remnants of John Pope's army of Virginia. So there's so much to it, but you just gotta take all this stuff with a grain of salt. So my personal opinion, I don't think he was cautious. I think he was smart. I think he had to see the enemy where they were before he acted. He wasn't impetuous like a Hooker probably would have been, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Lynn has a question. She was like, didn't Pinkerton feed McClellan inflated info on Confederate numbers as well?
It was mostly guys like Andrew Curtin, right, from Pennsylvania, Couch. Curtin was the one who wanted, but yes, to answer your question, yes, but it was Curtin, the governor of Pennsylvania, who really was the one who fed him these crazy numbers, because he wanted to make sure Pennsylvania was protected, because everybody knew he was going into Pennsylvania, but he's getting it from a lot of different stuff. But it was really the governor of Pennsylvania who was really giving him the numbers. So if you hear, we mentioned for Clemens speak, if you read some of the stuff, Tail and Twist of the Racino book talks about a little bit, but not too much. It's just kind of a paragraph. But if you go into some of the stuff in the really in-deep nerd level studies of McClellan, you'll realize all the stuff he was getting from all these different sources. But the answer to your question, he was getting it from everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, AQ makes a good point. He didn't get a 90-day orientation period. Like, he was basically thrown into it, and then he was taken out, and then he was thrown back into it again. And I mean, getting thrown back into it again after Second Manassas and what he did to clean up the army I think it was remarkable. When you think about it, like how demoralized they probably were after that. Like, it's really interesting how he was able to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, but that's the whole thing was if you're coming, and the McClellan situation is fascinating, because people tend to study the Civil War. They study this stuff in vacuums. You look at Gettysburg, okay, that the army just magically appeared on the battlefield, and how they fought. Lee was stupid. He should have done this. Meade was overcautious. He didn't chase him back. A lot of it's bullshit, but it's the lead up to it. Both McClellan and Meade took over their armies on the eve of major battles. Now, you can make a case that Maryland was more important because it led to the Emancipation Proclamation. It was Lee's real first venture into the North. Meade was following that playbook where he's finding out literally 3 days before.
Yeah.
Except he doesn't know where the hell Lee even is. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
McClellan finally finds that, he gets lost order 191. But one of my favorite things, my favorite misconception, I don't know why we're talking about McClellan, but here we go, right? Was 199, order 191 was Lee's battle plan. He had it in his hand. He had the battle plan in his hand.
It wasn't, though.
And it was a friggin' moving. It was A to B, B to C. It just told him where the guys were going. It didn't tell him we're all going to. And so that's the stuff that gets so overinflated. And you talk to some of the, and I'm more in the middle of McClellan, because I realize the dude's got some significant flaws. But at the end of the day, if you're going to take the pablum and you're going to take the full Steve Spears off the deep end crap, and you're going to believe the Nathan Kimball crap, and you're going to believe the William Swindon crap, well, then you just don't want to listen.
Yeah, you really shouldn't have to say that. I'm not apologizing for McClellan, but I mean, that's kind of how it is.
No, I mean, I don't want.
We still have to say that, but I mean, it's like people can talk about, I don't know who, like Lee or somebody, and they don't ever say, "Well, yes, I know he was flawed." Like you don't hear them say that. Whereas when you have somebody like McClellan who doesn't have a great record in the historical record, for some reason, there's this knee-jerk thing that people say, which is like, well, I'm not apologizing for him. I'm not defending him. I still realize he was a pompous ass. Like, you shouldn't have to say, like, you should just be able to talk about them. And it's funny when you do, even if you don't mention Lincoln, then the Lincoln people will jump all over you and be like, but he was mean to Lincoln. It's like, well,
there's the whole thing with McClellan is it's Lincoln. Is he had the nerve to basically write a 500-page, peon letter to Lincoln. Okay. And that's the thing. Now, Lincoln wasn't totally wrong either. I mean, he's still the man. He's still sitting in the big chair. So McClellan still reports, to him through Halleck and through Stanton. But going against the hand that fed you type thing twice, because he got put in command twice by Lincoln, was a line that he shouldn't have crossed. And the people who were really into this Lincoln community, you like to say from time to time, they hate him because he went against them, and they're blinded, and they take the Swinton story, and they take a lot of the stuff that's come out of it. Sears literally, in his book about Antietam, takes a source that he himself was on an earlier book, which was based on nothing. So, nothing against Steve Sears. He's a great historian, great writer. But when you want to go with somebody, you can pick and choose. You can cherry pick. And if that's the only thing you're going to read about him, you're going to come away with this impression that that's what it was. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But that's why you have to read so much about this. Like, I mean, Grant's memoirs are probably, one of the greatest tellings of the Civil War, but you have to read stuff in addition to that, because Grant leaves stuff out. He embellishes, he changes facts to, of course, it's memoirs. He's going to make himself look better in them, but that doesn't take away from what he's done. Sherman is notorious for it. I mean, Howard takes a shot at him in his own memoirs when he puts quotation marks around Sherman's memoirs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, memoirs are what they are. They're what I did at summer vacation. That's what they are. And that's what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
No one's going to write about a memoir about, God, that I suck. Yeah. No one's going to do that. That's what other people's jobs are to do. Yeah. You're going to write. This is your idea of how you want to be remembered. That's why we said that the diaries are cool, because a lot of them weren't intended to be published, so they're more honest.
Yeah.
But that's but we talked a lot about Longstreet last week, because we had Liz Varon on, and he's another one who gets a really shit end of the stick historically by certain people. Just replace Lincoln community with Lee community.
Yeah.
And it's all, again, stories that came out after the fact, not in real time, to kind of go at him for biting the hand that fed you. In this case, it's Lee. It all connects itself. It really does. It doesn't mean that these people writing these things are wrong. They're just presenting the narrative that they agree with and they like. And what's great about history is there really isn't a right or a wrong.
No.
It's all interpretation. But we see sometimes the people, you'll mention Howard, or somebody will mention anybody else, MJ's don't know if she's on here or not, but she writes about Cushman, and she gets pissed on for writing about Cushman, and because it's either black or white. They take the negative and make that 100% of the story, and that's especially it goes against the people. We mentioned with Rosecrans. You mentioned Rosecrans. Everyone who loves Grant, and I love Grant. Grant's the second best general in American history after Washington, right? But if you mention Rosecrans, it's the Grant people get bent out of shape about it. So you have to. I don't know how the hell you can study history without studying all angles. I don't get that.
You can't you can't do that. Charles says, I admittedly need to read more, but my issue with McClellan is his lack of action after the 7 days. Where was the effort to retake the strategic initiative?
Yeah, I mean, well, again, when you're 7 days now?
Yeah, 7 days. That's what he wants to know about. Like,
well,
lack of action after 7 days.
7 days is a tough spot because yes, that's June 1st, 1862. Lee takes over. The
Howard
campaign,
lost his arm.
Right? Oh, there's your answer. Howard lost his arm, right? But you're losing the initiative. You give the initiative, and that's not, and it's not a good moment for McClellan.
No,
but he's reacting to the fact that John Pope's division's gone. Now he's going from an offensive-minded strategy to suddenly, oh shit, I'm surrounded. Now I'm being attacked. He gives up White House Landing. He falls back. It's definitely not a good battle situation for him, and he definitely gets beat by Lee. There's no question. But again, he's getting information not told to him from Washington, and that's what killed his Peninsula campaign. It really, really did. So again, it's what I'm not going to sit here and tell you McClellan did no wrong because 7 days is
he had mistakes like ever.
But in real time though, the game plan changed. You watched the Army game yesterday against Navy. Great win for Army, by the way.
Yeah, the
game plan changed. Fourth quarter, Army's playing defense. Navy can't do a damn thing. What happens in the fourth quarter? Navy inexplicably starts throwing the ball. Army can't react to it. Now they're on defense in a game plan they're not used to fighting, and they won by that much. That's what happened in 7 days. Is Lee changed the game plan, and McClellan didn't realize it until it was too late, and they got him on the run, and that was it.
Yeah,
but that's what happens.
Yeah. Jordan mentions he's got a 4th edition of Sherman's memoirs printed in 1891. That's really cool.
Well, there you go.
I'd love to get I'd love to get an edition. I would love a 1st edition of Sherman's memoirs before he put in his new foreword where he basically had to say, this is my opinion of that. This is my opinion of what happened. This is my version.
What's funny was we have a 1st edition Grant memoirs here. And I was curious one day just to see how much it was worth because someone gave it to us, the 2 original 1st edition Grant memoirs from back in the day there. And if you have one on like page 2, it has like a facsimile autograph. These are my memoirs, Ulysses S. Grant. And I Googled, I went on to like eBay or somewhere, and someone was trying to sell an autographed copy, which is the same one. Yeah. But he died before that came out. So there's no way he could have signed the freaking book. Here are my memoirs. But it was someone was trying to sell an autographed U.S. Grant First memoirs for all this money. And I'm laughing, going, oh my God. That's why you got to be careful what you buy. So, caveat emptor, what the fuck that phrase is. But that's how it is though. Is the unabridged memoirs are pretty cool. The Grant one is still probably my favorite memoir as far as from a big A-level guy. But again, we've talked about that a million times. He's got his issues,
No, I mean, I love his memoirs. I love Sherman's. I think I have the Grant memoirs that were the annotated ones. And apparently that same group that did the annotated Grant memoirs is working on Sherman's, which I cannot wait to get because it would be interesting to read the annotations in that because I mean, Sherman's memoirs are definitely one of my favorites because he's funny.
Yeah.
And he talks about his days in California where he was living with 2 other guys and he was the cook or something. And then there was one time when he ate dinner at some restaurant, he had friends who were Spanish or something, and he was eating dinner there, and he didn't realize how hot the food, it was really spicy, and he didn't realize it, how spicy it was. And I don't think
he's not insane with the hot sauce.
He was not insane with the hot sauce, and it was insane hot sauce. But it was, and he's so into landscapes and describing the landscape. And you get an understanding of why he did so well on the March to the Sea because he was able to, he'd been in that area before the Civil War and he memorized how it looked. He talks about being at Fort Moultrie, and Reynolds was there. Talks about his time down in Florida, which must have been a real riot. Like,
You know who served at Fort Moultrie back in the day?
Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Poe. He was Sergeant Major, just like the movie Glory.
Nice.
Pretty cool. Fun little history there.
MJ mentions that Heath's memoirs are a good read.
Yeah, I mean anything is
Miranda
a
works
good
at a
read.
bookstore where they have like older editions of books, and she said they've got a couple. They might have a couple sets of Grant's memoirs, first edition, as well as Sherman's.
Yeah, those there's pretty cool reading that stuff. And we mentioned, you know, I don't think Bjorn's on here yet, but anybody who needs any sort of first edition anything, Abraham Lincoln Bookshop in Chicago, our Bjorn, he's probably our biggest sponsor, I guess, with this. But
yeah.
But he'll have anything. Just Google that. If you're looking for a first edition of God knows what, if he doesn't have it, he probably does. He'll get it. But if you're in Chicago, you got to go visit that. It's it's a bookstore,
it's like a museum.
Well, it is a museum. I mean, it's not like a Barnes and Noble where you walk in there and it's like a Starbucks in the corner and all that. It's basically a museum full of old books, and you can buy them. He has a lot of stuff on consignment. He has a gigantic Abraham Lincoln head statue. I mean, it's bigger than the real one, probably not that much, but it's pretty big,
No, it's really cool, and like the memoirs are like, and there's so many memoirs. Like I have Humphrey, I think it was Humphreys, what he wrote after the war, and I have his books about, I think
Andrew Humphreys.
Yeah, that book I got from Bjorn sent it to me.
Well, that's cool.
It was because I got it out from the library at school, and then Bjorn said, "Oh, I have a copy," and it's what is it? It's like Spotsylvania and all that, because I got it out when we were doing the episodes in Spotsylvania, and it's really cool. It's got some really amazing maps in it and stuff, and it's from the 1800s. And I mean, they don't make books like that now. Like books, trust me, from a library perspective, like when those hardcovers, like when they start circulating, they fall apart within like 2 years. And we've got books at Simmons that are like, they're old, like they're from the 1800s, and they're in such good shape.
I'd be interested in reading Andrew Humphreys' memoirs, specifically since we're talking Fredericksburg here, to talk about Fredericksburg. He's part of that center division under Hooker. I love to read his opinion of being in that center division with Hooker at Fredericksburg. I bet you that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll have to check at school and see if he wrote one about that.
Yeah.
So if he did, just asked where Abraham Lincoln Bookshop was in Chicago, because he lives like 40 minutes from the downtown. So I was
the exact address. You got me on that one. If you Google it, just Abraham Lincoln Bookshop. It's just out of downtown. I was staying right on the river last summer, and it was like a 15-minute Uber ride. But she'll give me the address here.
I just posted it for him.
I guarantee you. Okay, I guarantee you, if you go, you'll get out and you go, this cannot possibly be the place. It looks like a warehouse in the middle of a neighborhood. And you knock on the door, and then Bjorn will answer. But yeah, that's the place to go. And I would reach out to him. He's usually always there, but I'd shoot a message. Tell him that we sent you. He'll appreciate that. And he'll give you a tour of the place. He'll show you all the old books. He'll pull stuff out of the back and show you all the cool stuff. He's happy to show you all the stuff. He's a great dude. And he knows his stuff. I think was he a ranger at Shiloh?
Yep.
Yeah. So his forte is really on that Western theater, but he knows his stuff, and he's a great guy. He'll give you the nickel tour of that place, and I promise you'll be stunned if you go and visit that. It's probably one of the top 10 Civil War museums I've ever been to, when it's a bookstore. Yeah. That's how cool it is.
Yeah, Jared said he's going to go check it out.
Nice.
He's like 40 minutes from downtown Chicago. So
if you're going to buy a book, and you're going to buy one of the first editions, I mean, admittedly, you're talking antique books. It's not the cheapest store in the world, but he can get you anything. But if you go there and see it, if anything, just to see it, autographed pictures of Meade, Lincoln, Lee, and all this stuff all over the place. That's the place to go now. It is.
Yeah, it's a very cool spot, and he's got like Jordan said he's going to have to get there too. Yeah, it's definitely where. I mean, I've only been virtually because I wasn't with Darren when he was in Chicago. So, but you called me, which was nice, and I got to video tour of it, which is really, really cool.
Well, Chicago's a great city. It's one of my favorite cities anyway. But if you're in Chicago, go to it. I mean, it's not a place that you're not going to see on the Chamber of Commerce. It's nice to see in Chicago. But if you're into the history of the Civil War, then definitely go. I promise you will. If you're into the history, and if you're on this, you certainly are. You will absolutely you'll thank us for this, because it is so cool. It just is.
Yeah, and their website is like they've got a like here's their website. I'll post it in the comments. So this is the website, and they've got all their books on there. They've got the events that they have, all that stuff, but they've got a lot of cool stuff on there.
Yep.
Oh, Jaron said he's always wanted to grow his ORs. Do we have any ORs?
Yeah, somewhere. We got way too many books. It's get rid of some of these damn books, but yeah. Oh, some of the ORs are really, really cool. If you read George Meade's OR at Gettysburg, it's very fascinating because he makes no reference to John Cleveland Robinson at Gettysburg on day one, which is kind of which as a Tilden guy, man, the 16th Maine, Paul's Brigade, I was very offended.
I think MJ had a question about Tilden last night in her trivia.
About who?
Tilden. She had a question about him.
About who?
Tilden.
Tilden?
Oh, yeah. MJ did.
They said Chilton.
No, Tilden.
Oh no, Tilden's great. He's a great study. I mean, he's again, he's a guy that we are actively trying to get a posthumous Medal of Honor for. And
yes.
That is in process with the state of Maine and the federal government. It takes years, but we're trying. And if you don't study Gabriel Paul and Henry Baxter and everything that Robinson did, it's speaking of Gettysburg on that aspect of it. People, you think day one, you think of Iron Brigade, right? You think of Reynolds. You don't think of the 11th Corps as much. You think of Barlow maybe, but you certainly don't think of John Cleveland Robinson at all.
No. You know? Well, that's just, and that also goes back to like the movie too, and Killer Angels as well, and kind of just the parts of it, because you can't there's no way you could write a historical fiction about Gettysburg and include everything that happened. Yeah. Like that's Ryan said that Humphrey's book is a bit dry because he struggles to communicate without cussing.
That was a good thing about Humphreys, is he had good potty mouth. He's like you. You know, I mean, can you imagine that swear jar in the 5th Corps? I mean, the 3rd Corps at Gettysburg. It's probably how they found pay for the uniforms. You know.
Yeah, I've heard
between him and Sickles. Can you imagine? And this poor Howard sitting there have to listen to it probably in these meetings with Sickles going off.
Well, apparently when Howard got to the Western Theater, I guess General Reb Jefferson C. Davis would rile him up just by swearing. Like he would make a point of just every other word was a cuss word, and Howard would just get like, he would be like, dude, really?
Well, what surprises people, if you read a lot of the diaries, the really good ones, Smalls, Wainwright's, they same words today.
Yeah.
You think they talk about, so I must challenge your valor, sir. That's not how they talked. And then, and so the movie Gettysburg, they talk like they're reading a romance, how they talk about it. But F-bombs here, you name it. I mean, but that's what's great about the stuff, because we're all about humanizing and talking about the people, and if you want to study the war from that people perspective, how they lived, how they talked, how they complain they have to dig a latrine, and stupid stuff like that, and F this, F that. It's just fun to talk about.
Yeah, which is how I talk. And Scott said that he hasn't heard as many F-bombs from me lately. He thought she's mellowing.
Here we go. I know what you're going to say now.
No, I know, but like people who have left reviews of our podcast have like basically called me out for my swearing. And it's like, it's explicit.
There was that one story where some dude said he was listening to a podcast in the car with his kids, and you wanted this F-bomb profane rant, and a lot of kids were laughing, and he was mortified. And I mean, I don't know, whatever. But she's made an effort to tone it down. And what's funny was when we have guests on like Liz Varon,
I don't swear.
You're like, and you can tell that you're really actively trying not to.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's nothing wrong with it.
I mean, I do in real life. I do quite a bit. Like, I mean, I don't at school because like as much at school, obviously around like, but like normal conversation. I mean, MJ's hung out with me. She knows how much I swear.
Well, she's no teetotaler with the F-bombs either.
Everybody knows who's hung out with me that knows.
Oh yeah, but to be totally honest, has been a conscious effort on her part to curb that.
Yeah,
but whatever. It's just.
I mean, I still throw the occasional.
Everybody's adults.
But we got. I don't know. There was one review where the person was like something about it would be a better bar conversation if she didn't swear, and I was like, it's a bar conversation. Like,
It's just so funny. It's just this little
what do
mousy
you
librarian with
expect?
glasses who gets accused of f bombing too much. It's just so many weird parallels that, but that is true though. It is. If you go through the reviews, we don't really push for reviews here, but people do leave them sometimes. If you go on the Apple Tunes and read the reviews, you'll read the comments sometimes. People in most of the ones we get um that aren't glowing are because of her mouth. It's love it. It's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. Bill just said, be myself. Exactly. Like it, but just to hear it would be a better car or bar conversation if she didn't swear. And it's like, the fuck do you expect? It's a bar conversation.
It is what it is, but
Yeah.
no, but that's cool. I mean, people talk about that, but that's just the reality. And look, I get it. We have the explicit on there for a reason. It's because of Potty Mouth Canada over here, but
Yep.
that's it. It is what it is.
But I mean,
But
it
yeah,
allows you, but then you don't have to hold back when you're having a conversation, and there could be like subject matter that is worthy of an explicit, title, just if you're talking about gore with battles and stuff like that. And, um, like I remember the horse episode, you wanted to tone it down a little bit because children might be listening. And I'm like, I'm not going to not talk about how bad it was. For the
no,
horses.
that I didn't say tone it down. I remember saying that it's about horses, and that if any kid might listen to an episode, it might be about that one because of horses. But it didn't matter. You didn't, so it doesn't make it the hell I say.
No.
But I'm hardly the the responsible adult in the room here with this one. But I definitely you outrank me when it comes to the F bombs. To quote Sherman, there you go, right?
Yeah. I know Tammy's on here. Hey, Tammy. She
Hey.
said, just what I like about your discussions, they are real. Well, yeah, we don't script this. We have notes, obviously, but we don't talk about like how we sort
Well,
of
for the
talk
episodes, we don't do
loosely.
notes for these lives.
No, we don't. This is just like us. We don't have any notes at all. Well, right now I'm surrounded by notes from my project.
We prepare for the episodes though, but we
Yeah.
don't script it. We
yeah.
make bullet points and things we want to talk about, little things here and there. But no.
But something like, for instance, the Savannah thing that came
Oh
out,
yeah,
like almost
yeah.
3 years ago, where you were like, and then he went in the back door of Savannah, and that became a whole joke. So now when we say he got Savannah'd, that was completely like not planned at all. You just said it.
Well, there's things in life. You'll say things in your head, and you'll say them out loud. And then as you say it, you'll realize what you just said. But yeah, that's part of it. But it's natural discussion, though. I think people at the end of the day like to talk with like-minded people, and not that anybody's trying to teach anything with a silly podcast. But if you're gonna try to pick up on anything like that, it's easier to associate with common stuff instead of trying to be booky and nerdy, right?
Yeah. And scripting too. I mean, I just like to have my bullet points with notes, and we sort of have a brief, like kind of sort of an outline of how things are going to go. Like, for instance, this Hiram Granberry episode that we're going to record next week. We won't have a script for that. We just talk, and we have the
Granberry. And that's the thing too. Oh, speaking of the reviews, we get accused of being too north and too south.
Yes, we've had
the
that
same
one.
time, which is a pretty good trick if you think about it. But Granberry is a guy. I don't think a lot of people study. I mean, I gravitate towards Granberry because the Freemasonry stuff, and he's got great hair. As Taylor would say, Mary, he's got hella good hair. Right?
Oh, he does. He is the patron saint of every kid who didn't brush his hair. Oh, David
did.
David Maxwell said the Savannah thing is hilarious.
Yeah, Savannah, that was pretty fun. But when you study a guy like Granberry, you realize he's the perfect epitome of the type of guys we talk about here, both the North or South, which is a guy who kind of didn't come from the big military background. He kind of got forced into the war because he was smart and he could read, and he was very intelligent. He was put into command of a regiment, and he had natural leadership abilities, and he rose quickly, very similar to John Gordon.
Yeah.
Gordon was that 6 Alabama, the Raccoon Roughs, right? He was a smart guy, attorney, and he was much more of the fire eater type than Granberry was. But he rose, and he was a natural leader. And we've said before, some of the best generals in the Civil War weren't the West Point guys, because they didn't have to unlearn Jomini or Dennis Mahan.
Yeah.
They just I think we should do this. I think that's what we should do. And it worked. And they became more popular, and more confidence in them from higher management. And Granberry's a perfect example of that. And he's a guy who, he had that unfortunate event at Spring Hill, which really wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he felt it was, and it led to that bloodletting of being one of those 6 Confederate generals who ended up eventually losing their lives at the Battle of Franklin. We've talked about that. But his life was, like Longstreet's, was full of tragedy, and he
Yeah.
always seemed to come back from it. He was like the Energizer Bunny, where he just could not keep him down, right? And it was an unfortunate death, but because he's not part of that A-list group, people don't study a guy like that. And when you're studying specifically some of the battles we've talked about, Pickett's Mill specifically, who is this Granberry guy? He's always there.
Yeah.
Ringgold Gap. He's when the shit's real on the Confederate side, he's always the guy in the middle fight. So you're attracted to him to learn more about him because his story is not really told.
Yeah, and
right?
the story with his wife too. And I think I told you I found that painting of Pickett's Mill, and I'm like, oh look, there's Granberry, and you can tell because of his hair.
Yeah,
he's got gigantic hair.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people like that who really, under normal circumstances. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a book on. I'm sure there is a book on Granberry.
No,
somewhere.
there is. Someone mentioned it last week on here. I'll have to find out the title of it.
Yeah, but I've never seen any podcast or any presentation on Hiram Granberry, which is unfortunate. But I guess that's what's good about the podcasts like this one. Hessler has got that great podcast that the Battle of Gettysburg podcast. There's a whole bunch of really good ones that we support because it talks about the non-popular or understudied aspects of some of these. And if people listen to the Granberry one, we hope they do. But if they do and they like it and they decide to research themselves, right, it goes from there. Right. Look at Craig Simons with Claiborne. He didn't study him at all until somebody in one of his classes at the Naval Academy, go Army, by the way, Mary, wrote a paper about Patrick Claiborne. He's like, who's this Claiborne guy? So he got that intellectual curiosity.
Yeah.
And he ended up writing probably the premier story on Patrick Claiborne.
It's such a good book.
So that's what happens sometimes.
Scott just mentioned that he read it. And Frank mentions Granberry's Texas Brigade by Lundberg. Lone Star General is another one that I'm seeing here. There's one called The Band of Heroes. Granberry's Texas Brigade by James McCaffrey.
Yeah, I'm sure there are books out there, but there's not a book on Ronald C. White about him or anything. There's not that story. But that's why the Savas Beatties of the world are great, because they encourage these up and coming authors to write these different books. We mentioned Racino's book on McClellan. That comes down that pike. So it's just pretty cool. So if anyone has any sort of inkling to study and write, there are publishers out there who even in this anti-Civil War political era we're in right now are still willing to listen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to, because you have to be able to tell the story of it. And Granberry is one of those guys that he's seemingly, like in the Western theater, he's like everywhere. He gets captured. He's a prisoner in Boston for a while at Fort Warren. I read one account where he was at Johnson's Island, but there's no way he could have been at Johnson's Island because it wasn't open at that time. So
that's the thing as you study this, and not to mention, I mean, Johnson's Island was more of it
was officers.
Well, I mean, it's tough to imagine how some of these places were, but he went over here to Boston Harbor, and so he would have been at Fort Warren. Well, that's where he was, but that was a different type of prison.
Yeah,
it wasn't Camp Douglas, Chicago. Elmira gets a lot of shit, even though it wasn't as bad, remotely bad as people say it was. But it's still, he didn't have to go there either. But
I mean, Hiram Granberry was playing baseball.
Yeah. So, but none of these places were picnics either. Don't get me wrong. But again, it was not. I had someone try to explain to me one time that Elmira was just as bad as Andersonville, and I was like, oh, really?
Yeah, and then we went on that tour of Elmira, and it turns out it was.
Well, if you study Elmira, I mean, Doug Oakes has that. He's the one who runs that site down there, and they're rebuilding it. If you get a chance, if you find yourself in Elmira, New York, you can definitely go visit that site. And you reach out to them first, because it's not like Andersonville. You just stroll in.
Yeah.
But they they're building a lot of different things to make that place much more user friendly to visit. But it's a great place to go. It just is.
Yeah. And it's like a husband and wife that work there, and they're really awesome. Like they're so fun to hang out with too.
Yeah.
Bill mentions you guys open up so many different paths. I'm guilty of getting too focused on the same things. I need this hit in the head to recognize the plethora of subjects out there. There's so much to study with the Civil War. And I mean, admittedly, I am still at my core very Western theater. It's very much where I'm most comfortable. Yes, obviously Oliver Otis Howard and Claiborne. And it's really, I don't know, but there's just so much out there that you can study. And this podcast has definitely forced me to look at more of the Civil War, which I'm thankful for. Tammy just mentioned she finished a book on Dr. Letterman, and she got interested because of an ancestor of hers.
Well, there's a lot of that's the thing. What's so cool about it is I have a friend who's a direct descendant of Charles Russell Lowell.
Yeah.
And so not that she's going to be signing on to be a guest on the podcast anytime soon. She doesn't know if the Civil War is, she thinks the West won. That's how she doesn't know the Civil War, but she thinks it's cool. She thinks it's fascinating to be a direct descendant of someone whose sister married Robert Gould Shaw.
Yeah,
so that's pretty sweet. She knows Glory, so that's cool. But that's how it is. But there's a lot of things that can take you in different directions. I'm a Gettysburg guy. That's we use the phrase binky a lot. That's Howard's your binky, right? And so Gettysburg was kind of where I really resonated with, and then it expands out and you study at different aspects, and you find out these different guys: Daniel Butterfield, Andrew Humphreys, George Sykes, all these people who you don't really study, that you read their names that pop up in the Battle of Gettysburg, and then you read their individual stories, and it takes you down a different rabbit hole. Dan Sickles, Abner Doubleday, right? Everyone knows Doubleday, but then you're introduced to other people at different battles. Phil Kearny, Baldy Smith, Kirby Smith. I mean, on the different side. So, and then it kind of goes. It's like that ancestry thing. If you want ancestry, it's a little leaf, and it takes you a different direction. That's how it is, and it's never ending for learning. Yeah. And some of the folks who do tours or write books or on the TV, who use superlatives. This guy was the best. This guy was the worst, and it's really missing the boat, because no one knows everything.
No.
I've got friends who are Rangers who freely tell me that some of the stuff they say, they don't think is 100% true, but they say it. That's how they feel.
Well, nobody knows if anything is 100% true in this.
No, sometimes. And that's the thing too, is you fill in the gaps a lot. People like George Thomas burnt their papers, for example.
Yep, and so we can't tell his full story.
And so you can't tell, but you can certainly tell. You can certainly surmise by actions up the North, guys like Sherman, guys like Grant, guys like Blackjack Logan didn't like or didn't trust him. And how close he came to being removed at the Battle of Nashville. Yeah. By Grant himself. Yeah, because he was a Virginian, right? And so that's the thing is you find out these guys, and there's so many. I remember when I realized that Logan had a circle in Washington D.C., like DuPont's circle. Yeah. Like Blackjack Logan. We saw Franz Siegel's statue in Manhattan 2 weeks ago. And so when you study this, you kind of go, well, why is there a statue of Franz Siegel in New York City?
Yeah, so that was so bizarre.
And so you study him, and it takes you down this other rabbit hole. It's all, and we learn a lot just by comments on here.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Frank just mentioned that he finally got to see the gravesite of a Civil War soldier that he'd been studying. He fought at Gettysburg in the 59th New York and is buried in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
that's really, really cool. And Tammy mentioned she's got ancestors on both sides.
Well, most people do. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about it. Is some people embrace it, some people don't. I know people who are Southerners who hate the fact that their great whatever fought for the Confederacy, because they hate it. But it's you do you. Everyone's a little bit different.
That's the history of it. If you go back and look at their letters and stuff. And I mean, I love reading the letters because you can learn so much from there that's not going to be in the books. For instance, we finally confirmed, as we suspected, that Oliver Otis Howard was going to be put in charge of the Second Corps after Gettysburg.
Yeah. When
Hancock was wounded, which is really interesting.
Well, we've talked about Kearny. Speaking of Kearny, how he doesn't get killed at Chantilly, how does that change history? Because he had Corps command written all over him. There's no question he did. Maybe even higher.
Yeah. Oh, I think he eventually would have been commanding.
But the bullet hit him with a good Lord split him, Mary. And that was unfortunate.
So
Phil Kearney.
Bad.
But again, how does that change history?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Kearney's an interesting individual.
Sure he is. He's one of the best generals the country had. But again, people don't study him. You drive through New Jersey, you see Kearney, New Jersey. Yeah. First you'll think it's Kearney. It's right within but the problem is that it's close enough and you can literally smell the stench of the New York Jets stadium. Right. But it's a good place to visit. They got a good Kearney statue there. We were not far from Kearney.
I know. I wish we had seen the statue.
Yeah, we were pretty close there a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Tammy asked how to research the letters. Well, for instance, Oliver Otis Howard's letters are in Howard University. They're at Bowdoin College. They're at Lincoln Memorial University. If you just Google, Civil War soldier letters, you should get something.
You know what's if you're into the Southern stuff, Tammy, a great place to go is the University of North Carolina.
Yes.
They've got a lot of D.H. Hill stuff. They've got a lot of Stephen Ramser's stuff. You can go on and read that. UNC has a fantastic online repository of Confederate letters. And they're transcribed. They're typed. You don't have to read the cursive. But you can but that's a good one. Universities are by far the best. Find out where your favorite general went to school, and then look for the university that he went to. So if you want to read about any of these guys, but UNC is probably the best one, I think. In Virginia too, but especially North Carolina. You can go in there. You could spend days reading that stuff.
Oh yeah, I spend just on Howard University on their archives, just reading these letters, and luckily they're all transcribed. Although Howard had good handwriting, so his letters are easy to read. But they've been transcribed, which is nice as well. But the thing about looking at his original letters are you get to see the drawings he put in them.
I'll tell you what, if you like letters, I'm just thinking because our friend Pete Carmichael, read those Futch letters. Those are cool because, we had him on the podcast, 6 or so months ago. And we talked, he wrote that really good book of letters, but those two brothers, the Futches, it's a tragic set of letters.
Yeah. Jordan just said he started reading the Futch letters because of the podcast.
Oh, well, there you go, Jordan. Appreciate that. So instant karma, you mentioned right there.
Yeah, and Dr. Carmichael's book is really good too.
He's a good dude too. And he's a good beer drinking guy too. So
he's so fun to hang with.
Throwing back empties with him at the four score. Him and Edelman that day was a good freaking day too. That's what's great about this is because as you study this and you visit some of these places, you get to meet a lot of people who study this. They're all people for the most part. They're all cut from the same cloth.
Yeah,
right.
They all just like to sit. I mean, some of the best conversations we've had have been at the mine with I remember after the Civil War event we did at the museum in Harrisburg, there was David Maxwell and Gentili was there, MJ, AQ. We were all sitting around just talking about the Civil War.
Where is Gentili, by the way?
Not on here.
He ain't here. Our conciliary is not here today.
Conciliary.
No, but also, a lot. What's great about the Civil War is you don't have to rely on any resource. You can do your own. Mm-hmm. Just go into one of these universities, go online, reach out to them. And you mentioned a little while ago, you got all those awesome Howard letters from Lincoln Memorial, right? Mm-hmm. In Howard University. And if you like Chamberlain, or go to Bowdoin, or and Bowdoin has all these letters on. You can read these original letters, and these are the primary sources that a lot of these guys use to write their books. And you're not going to get the spin. You're going to get specifically what these guys wrote, and all the stuff. A lot of the stuff, unfortunately, is gone. Has been destroyed in real time. Yeah. But the stuff that exists, it's all out there.
Yeah. And I mean, the funny part about Howard, we talked about this last week, is he didn't insult anybody, but the closest he came to it was when he was telling his wife that Hood had taken over the Army of Tennessee, and he was like, Hood is stupid.
Yeah.
That's the most disparaging thing he said. Hood is stupid.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about Hood with a lot of this stuff, and again, he's wrong place, wrong time. We've said that a million times. But he doesn't act out of his character. And that's the thing. We know people who are Hood defenders, and what they always come back to with John Bell Hood was he is what he is. He does what he does. He
Yeah.
doesn't change. So if you want a guy, an aggressive guy who's gonna go full banana and hit everybody, he's your guy.
Yeah.
And so as much as we talk about Franklin specifically, don't forget his job specifically, was to go ahead and destroy that army right there and
Yeah.
not let them get back to Nashville, right? And if Schofield gets to Nashville, he's going to reinforce Thomas and make that job even harder. So beat them in detail, right?
Yep.
Exactly what Lee was fearing at Gettysburg, and he thought he had them. He had. Don't forget, at Franklin, you have their backs to a river. And so you have the ability to destroy that army right there, but it just doesn't work out. And weather has to do with it, maybe a little too aggressive. The great Emerson Opdyke, Mary, has something to do with it.
Opdyke's
right?
Tigers.
But there's so much to it. So it's easy to label somebody until you really get into the nitty gritty and look at the situation in real time and try to figure out and try to understand why the decisions were made, right?
Yeah.
And why they did this instead of just labeling that guy's stupid. Now, I think he was stupid. But again, I have 160 years of hindsight to look back on. He doesn't. He's got that big beard that clouds his view, I think.
Yeah.
That's part of his problem.
But it's funny how his reputation, was even back then, where Sherman goes to McPherson, his classmate, and McPherson basically is the same assessment as Howard. He's dumb.
But he was really, if you want to blame the deaths of those 6 Confederate generals, you look at Davis.
Yeah, Davis.
But again, Davis, he's a president. He wants victories. He wants go. He wants offensive. He wants to seize the initiative that Sherman took away. Now Sherman's going towards Savannah, fighting those old men and those young boys along the way, and he's barely fighting at all. But now he has the ability to destroy Schofield's army in peace, in detail, and then maintain that to seize that initiative again.
Yeah.
And then in his mind defeat Thomas and take Nashville back, in maybe Eastern Tennessee. And that's so on the big picture, it makes a hell of a lot of sense why he does that. But again, looking back in history, you realize that she was barking up the wrong tree when he should have, my opinion, he should have gone after Sherman.
Yeah.
But that's history.
I think Beauregard might have told him something similar to that. He was like, dude, your plan is like crazy. Like, why aren't you staying here? Miranda says tours at Franklin are really good. And Frank said one of the things that stuck with his is that anybody else in Hood's position might have done the same thing.
No, again, you're looking for victories. Things are going bad at this point, right? You're looking for you're grasping at straws. Okay, if we take Nashville, we destroy the Union supply line. We take that capital back, right? Then maybe we can pivot and we can go east and we can go join Lee again, and we can try to start. But so you're grasping at straws, but that's at that point it's fight or die.
Yeah.
Right. So you do what you have to do in real time. And it didn't work out, obviously. But again, we're sitting back on an ivory tower a century and a half later, dissecting and analyze every aspect of these guys' decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Where in real time, I mean, maybe I would have done the same damn thing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is we weren't there in real time. Like it's,
I'd have been like Rambo Mary. I would have done myself.
Well, you go back, like, I think of somebody like, again, yes, I'm going to reference Howard, but how he felt, getting that news at the Fonistock House, and how people basically, by the end of the day, he's very frazzled. He's described in Elizabeth Thorne's place as just like his empty sleeve is like swinging around because he's so frazzled. If I'd been up since 4:30 in the morning and I found out I was in charge, and I had
we'd all be freaking out.
Well, I had all this shit hanging over my head from Chancellorsville. I probably would be a little bit frazzled. And Hancock comes onto the field and he's very calm and collected. Well, Hancock hasn't been fighting all day. That's the thing. It's not to put Hancock down for that, but that's why, who knows if it was reversed, it might have been, Hancock is frazzled and Howard is the one that's calm. But when Rufus Dawes gets on the field, gets back to East Cemetery Hill, he said that Hancock and Howard were both very calm. Like, that's the one thing about Howard that you don't hear a lot about, but what his soldiers said about him was that he was always calm.
Well, think you know, you say you work at a job, you have a really shitty, stressful day, and if 5 o'clock comes, the next shift comes in, and you're freaking out because this has gone wrong, this has gone wrong.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the guy who replaces you is going to be calm and cool because he doesn't have that. He doesn't
Yeah.
know what the hell happened. He realized what's probably happened, but the statue shows Hancock with his hand out,
Yeah.
calming the troops
With the McDonald's
but,
bag.
with the McDonald's. Yeah, but he of course he was, and people. And you got to commend Hancock because he had a really strong leadership
Yeah.
ability that Howard didn't have. And it's no offense it's not a knock on Howard. Some people have it, some people don't. Not to say Howard didn't have any, but Hancock had that thing about him. And so he's going to come, and they see him coming. And my boss always used to tell me back in the day, don't freak out unless you see me freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you see your boss freaking out, you're going to be nervous. Howard's got that great story of that private with the flag bearer.
Yeah.
Right. Where, he's down there and Howard says, go take that flag and put it on that wall, which is pretty much right near where the hotel is now, if you know Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Because the field can when one more patch down.
Yeah.
And he goes, I will if you go with me. And he doesn't know who Howard is. He has no idea. And Howard could have sat there and flipped out at him, but no, he shows personal leadership. He says, I'll take the flag with you. He walks down, he plants the flag.
Yeah.
So if he's freaking out that bad, he could have, he wasn't freaking out at that moment.
No, he freaked out, I think, once he got into Elizabeth Thorne's place and he was around his staff.
Yeah.
And that's when he did. That's when as a leader, you can have your freak out when your other people aren't around you. I mean, it's happened to me before as a manager where I've had to remain very calm in situations that were really stressful. And then afterwards, you have your freak out.
Oh, they still talk about the Blizzard machine breaking in 2011 in Canada. They still talk about your freak out that day.
At the whole DQ.
At the DQ up in Kincardine, the Dairy Queen of Kincardine. But that's the whole thing. It's leadership, and Hancock had his moments. I mean, you talk about Gettysburg. You talk about his confrontation, his polite conversation with Henry Hunt there on July 3rd. Well, it's sarcasm fingers, Mary, where he's going to lose his shit right then and there, right on the battlefield. So again, in real time, people have been act differently, and some people are calm and cool. And U.S. Grant gets all kinds of credit because he never, by all accounts, he never lost his mind. He woke up in the morning, he was ready to go. He got beat a few times.
Yeah, that's what Howard said about him. Howard said he was so calm,
he just seemed to have that. He seemed to have that, that low level type of calm where he didn't overreact. And then you got some other guys like Sherman.
Oh, Sherman, like Howard described Sherman as he was never not moving. Even when he was sitting, he would constantly be fidgeting and stuff. And he said that Sherman and Grant were the exact opposites, but you could tell they were very, very good friends. But Sherman just never shut the fuck up. Whereas Grant was very calm, would listen to everybody when they had something to say. And then think about it and then give his opinion on it. But he said Sherman would be even when he was sitting in a chair, he would constantly uncrossing his legs and just fidgeting. He would get up and walk around, and he would pace a lot too.
Yeah, we definitely. Speaking of Franklin, we'll definitely head down to Franklin next year. We'll try to do some kind of thing. Maybe we'll try to do some kind of.
Yeah, there's some people going for the 160th, which would be really cool to go to.
Yeah, we got to see if they make that happen. The dates, it all depends on with us. It always depends on the dates, but we'll see how that goes. But that'd be cool to do. If not that weekend, I mean, I know we know a lot of people in that area, so people might want to drive down. But that's how it was.
Frank's got a question. In Coddington's book, it states that Howard had little confidence in his own 11th Corps. How true was that? It's true.
Yeah, it was the Germans. I mean, he loved Adele Bart Ames, Francis Barlow, people like that. But he knew he was taking over for Franz Sigel, so he knew that he immediately had generals like Karl Schurz, Shizanovsky, Schimmelfennig, all these people who from foreign lands, Mary, who didn't like the Bible thumping Maynard with the one arm.
Yeah.
I think he was a little. I always think of Howard as a guy. He has that. that imposter
syndrome. Yeah.
where he felt like he was doing his best, but he always felt like, am I the right guy here? Should I be doing this?
That's
right?
an accurate assessment.
I think he had that issue, but he's not the only one who had the issue with the Germans. I mean, there were Germans and the Confederates too. They were there for everywhere there were.
Yeah, and there was there was a language barrier. There was, but if you read his letters, he does write to his wife at one point. He said, "I think my troops have more confidence in me now." So I think Howard went into it with his troops not having confidence in him, and it was the same. But he does say in his memoirs after Chancellorsville, he said that he really felt bad for how his whole corps was being treated, especially the Germans. And he said that he's like, my men deserved a chance to prove themselves, that they wouldn't always run. Because someone in the army, we suspect it was Meade, wrote him a letter and said, you need to seek a new command because these guys are always going to run.
And you talk about July 2nd, that night battle in Cemetery Hill there, and that's the truth, because Ricketts, his battery, they were told specifically, you got to fight here till the death, because these infantry, these 11th Corps, the Flying Dutch, they called them.
Yeah.
Deutsch, of course, not being Dutch like Longstreet's family, right?
Yeah.
They're going to leave, and von Gilsa, they did take off, and the artillery was able to mount and keep Hayes, keep Avery at bay. Speaking of Hayes, he had those Louisiana Zouaves with him, the Louisiana Tigers, who were dancing around drunk all the time. So they had their own issues to deal with. But you're going to have to deal with them, and but you got Shizanovsky, who did stay and fight, and you got a little help from Samuel Carroll from the Second Corps to help keep the Confederates from taking East Cemetery Hill. That part of the battle does not get enough credit. The Culpsel part of it in East Cemetery Hill, if the Confederates take either, that's game over at Gettysburg. Mm-hmm. It just is. So to answer that question, a lot of those Union troops who got the 11th Corps, who got labeled at Chancellorsville, some of them did the same thing at Gettysburg, but it wasn't that first day. They get blamed for that. They fought like hell that first day. It's that second day that they did. But not all of them did.
No,
Shizanovsky guys, they fought. They fought with Carroll. They fought to maintain those guns.
Yeah.
But the
Schimmelpfennig was MIA at that point.
No, but yeah, I mean, he's that whole thing is a little overplayed too. But I mean, but you do have that reputation to deal with, and if you're the commander, it's going to fall on you. But you're herding cats at that point. Yeah. How are you going to keep a lot of these guys who don't like you because you're not Franz Sigel and aren't fighting for their country, right?
Yeah.
How are you gonna have them fight as if they're the Iron Brigade? And the fact that he was able to get them to fight as hard as they did at Barlow's Knoll, as hard as they did in some cases on the seconds, is commendable for Howard. I don't understand the Howard hate on Gettysburg. I get the Chancellorsville one, but the Gettysburg one is a little misplaced.
Yeah, the Gettysburg one is I don't really buy into that one as much. The Chancellorsville stuff I get because he made mistakes there, but I mean, he was going off what he knew. Scott asked, did Howard ever attend any of the reunions of the 11th? That I think he did, but I haven't come across it specifically, but I think he did. But it wouldn't have been as much because for a while he was out west, and unless he came back.
You know that better than I would. I've not seen a story of him speaking, but I know he did speak a lot.
Yeah.
So the reality is he probably, I bet you without knowing anything fashion, I bet you he did. I bet you he did.
Yeah, he did a lot of speaking tours. So I'm suspecting he did. He had he had a talk that he gave about Sherman, about Grant, about Thomas, just different stuff. And I mean, fun fact, Howard's last speaking engagement before he died was in Canada, in London, Ontario. And he went back to Vermont and died less than a week later. But that was his last speaking engagement, was in a town about an hour away from my own hometown.
Did he go up there because he liked Tim Hortons and hated America?
Yeah, probably. Okay. He got his Timmies.
Speaking of freaking out.
Yeah. You need to make a meme with Howard and Tim Hortons.
Oh yeah. But no, but a lot of these guys. I mean, the reunion stuff was great, but not you're not gonna. There's not a lot of cases where a lot of these high level guys went to the reunions too. A lot of them are
Sherman
soldier
used to.
reunions.
Sherman used to.
Sherman would go to them. Hancock would. I love the fact that Hancock went to the first Minnesota reunion because that just goes. I mean, that's just goes Hancock's pure brass balls to do that. And to sit there and say, yeah, I know what I did, but I had to do it and I would do it again.
Yeah. Frank So Canada was responsible for killing Howard. He had too much poutine.
Probably too many Anne Murray albums, put him over the top.
He probably liked Anne Murray.
Oh, God, who the hell knows? He probably would have liked, I don't know, whatever it was. But that's the reality though. But it's when you read some of the individual stories, you get a good flavor for how they probably would have reacted towards a lot of these people. And that's what's neat about it.
Yeah. Howard was apparently a very, very good speaker. Like he had this brochure, like, and he had like kind of what we would consider today a publicist as well. And I think it was like $100 or something that he was paid for going and speaking. David said Sickles was always around at reunions. Oh yeah, Sickles is like a party boy.
Sickles loved the rubber chicken tour. He did, and he was a guy because he knew. Sickles. I think Sickles just loved to be Dan Sickles loved to be famous. Whether he was like Howard Stern, whether you loved him or hated him, you were talking about him. And I think he'd love that. And that story with Longstreet down in New Orleans,
where they walk each other back and forth.
Well, not just that, but he goes to a Confederate reunion. Okay, he goes to a Confederate reunion, and in the middle of the ballroom, he stands on his chair, which must have required some help, obviously.
Yeah,
and he asked the whole group to sing the Star Spangled Banner. All these Confederate veterans. I mean, he was probably like you on a Friday night. He's probably completely freaking blind to what he was doing, but he did it though, and he actually got the people to sing along with him. And so, but that's what's neat about it. Some of these stories, and you think about maybe your grandparents fought in World War II, and you hear some of their stories about some of their reunions, the drinking and the cigars. They're the same people. Just not literally, but the same mentality. They like to tell war stories, like to be around they're like-minded people. The stories all get embellished. They hear all. I mean, Chamberlain specifically tells these stories of, the fish got bigger every single time he told the story.
Yeah, that was one thing Howard didn't like about him was just how the story would change. And then like, I do know Howard when he lived in New York City, Slocum lived there too, and so did Sherman. And the three of them would always go to like the opera or to plays and stuff. And Howard always sat on the right side and Slocum on the left, because that was like the wing commander thing. But the three of them hung out, and obviously that's the camaraderie. They all went through that March to the Sea together. The other story that I love, and I need to find out more information about this, is about the Dan Sickles being at Howard's 70th birthday and giving a speech.
Yeah, and we've talked to Hessler about that, and somebody somewhere wrote down some quotes somewhere.
Yeah, you said it probably started off with, we gave an arm and a leg for this war.
Yeah, I would have if I was writing that one. That's what I would have done. But that's
I mean, that's so cool.
To be a fly on the wall in some of these moments would have been really, really cool. And again, a lot of these people were rock stars in the day after this.
Sherman was considered the first celebrity general because he just loved the spotlight.
Grant was too. I mean, Grant was that generation's George Washington. He really, really was. But just to be, my grandfather would tell me stories when he was, when he was young, he'd go down to, downtown Waltham and watch the parade on July 4th. And they had Civil War veterans when he was a kid. And I remember seeing the World War II veterans or World War I veterans, I think. It was like, oh, wow, who the hell it was. But it was, but that's the reality. Yep. And they all got the big cheers. They got and if you were a moderate guy, like a Charles Devins type from Massachusetts, you were a celebrity, let alone Joe Hooker from here.
Oh yeah, he's got that awesome statue down at the State House.
Well, Joe Hooker was a rock star in Massachusetts, and the ladies loved him, and he loved the ladies. He was a good looking dude. He was a general, and he loved being Joe Hooker. But I think that concussion absolutely changed his life. I think he was never the same.
No, he wasn't, and that's why he died of a stroke too. It was probably, and who knows, that was the one. I think now we know it was a concussion, but who knows how many of those he had throughout the war, that it just builds up over time. And he had a stroke he wasn't old when he died.
Well, the physical, you know, pounding these guys took. And I remember, that story, at the Battle of Gettysburg, if you know the corner of Steinwehr and Tawnytown Road, it's right where the 55th Ohio was, the 73rd Ohio Monument was. You had artillery there, and they're firing, boom, boom, boom. They're firing the Confederate side towards the Rec Park and, towards the Confederate line. And there are stories where a week after the battle, all those guys' teeth fell out from the percussion, just fell out because and so in the damage of one right before they pull the lanyard, they'd all open their mouths to let the pressure out. That's how much physical damage these guys took. So concussions and all the stuff that happened probably happened all the time.
Not to mention how many of them are like deaf after the war. Like you think of someone like John Gibbon, who was like artillerist, like he probably couldn't hear very well after the war.
No, and so the long-term physical effects, and don't even talk about PTSD. I mean, Rufus Dawes gets all the publicity for that, but that happened all the free. We found Rosecrans after. You almost guarantee, without being an armchair psychiatrist, looking at the post actions of someone like Rosecrans, it's hard to imagine he didn't suffer from that.
Yeah, especially what happened to that at Stones River with his friend getting his head like lopped off in front of him, and like and just the way he is at Chickamauga is so different from the Rosecrans you see at Tullahoma and Stones River.
His personality completely, after Garage is killed, his personality totally changes. He loses a lot. The fastball is definitely gone. All these guys have a certain amount of tread on their tires mentally.
Yeah.
You can see when the tires go bald.
Yeah.
In certain cases.
Yeah.
Some are easier to find than others. Rosecrans is pretty easy.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah. But then you have like men like Sherman and Grant and Howard that seemingly, I wouldn't say they were okay, but some of the stuff, especially that Howard says in his memoirs, is very like, how he talks about Pickett's Mill was a nightmare. That he never wanted to. He'd been at Antietam and he'd been at Gettysburg, and he thought that was bad. And then he was at Pickett's Mill. And I guess he had to lie in the field for a few hours with dying soldiers around him. And he talks about how like you could hear the soldiers like crying. And then you had the soldiers that were getting drunk because Howard's like, they could not deal with what they were witnessing there.
Well, that's why the reason why they had the bands, because they drone out the sound of the moans and also the sound of the amputations.
Yeah.
That's why you had musicians,
Yeah. And Howard talks about his amputation. It's not gory, but it's like he just remembers getting put under and waking up and he didn't have an arm, and that was it. And they had to wait a certain amount of time before they did it.
I went to a lecture one time, and they talked about the whole lecture was on amputations, of how they did it. And if you went to it, I mean, people assume they just throw your arm down, they saw you off. That's not how they did it. They would take a knife and they would basically fillet your skin so it flaps. Then they'd cut the bone and they'd wrap the skin around it. So first thing they did was kind of like it's brutal to watch them talk about how they did it.
Yeah, but I can't do that. I have a tough time in the Seminary Ridge Museum with the medical scenes. Yeah. Tough time at the National Civil War Museum in Harrisburg with that. Like it makes me like just, I don't know, not really nauseous.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. It was brutal,
Yeah. Miranda mentions the soldiers at Gettysburg that had the glowing wounds. I think that was Shiloh, wasn't it?
That was Shiloh. Shiloh. Yeah. And that was because of the bugs, the phosphorus that got into the bodies and the swamps, and it lit up at night. And that one and the Northern Lights story at Fredericksburg are the fascinating ones. Mm-hmm. You can imagine you're a soldier, speaking of Fredericksburg, and you see the Northern Lights that far south, mm-hmm. and these religious-minded people, you absolutely think God has taken the soldiers.
Howard probably thought it was souls.
God. Oh, you kidding me? It's probably what it was. He's probably going, see, I told you. God, there goes Larry. There he goes. See him? There he goes. But that's true though, But that story was absolutely Shiloh, and that's one.
Bill just said my wife just fainted about the filleting. Yeah,
I mean it's brutal. And I forget who the hell did. It was one of the ones that was down there. But yeah, they put your arm down. They would take the knife and they would just your skin. So you end up with this exposed flesh with the bone. Then they cut the bone and they wrap the skin around it. That's why you get that. That's how you get that nub. Is they would flay your skin first. And that's how they did it. Stop.
Howard would talk about how it took months for him to be able to sleep on his right side again because the pain. And I mean, this is a guy that was back in the war. Like he was back after about 6 or 7 weeks, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just think about how you're staving off. They didn't even really know about infection back then or germs, and and so to survive an amputation, and then the further up the arm or leg you got, the less likely you're going to survive. Statistically, but just to make it to that point, especially when battle amputations, when you don't have the whiskey or the chloroform, they tell you to literally bite the bullet where that phrase comes from.
They had chloroform. Howard was put under.
Yeah, I mean, a general like Howard's going to have it, but Joe Schmo from Idaho, Mary, who gets shot in the leg at the Battle of Fredericksburg and needs an amputation, ain't going to get it. Ain't got it. You're going to bite that bullet down, and you're going to have your leg filleted and then cut.
Yeah, that's
hard pass.
No, I can't do the medical stuff. It makes me. Frank, did anyone ever survive a head amputation?
I think there was that one guy.
Oh,
head amputation. Somebody somewhere probably said, what if that'll work? Give that a shot.
Let's amputate your.
No, but you can study if you read some of the stories, read some of Clara Barton's letters. If you ever get a chance to do a presentation at a place like Gettysburg on amputations, which is a gruesome one to go to, because you go up there and I think it was one of the field hospitals. It wasn't Spangler Farm. It was somebody else.
Yeah.
And I forget who did it. It doesn't matter. But
There's a few of the park rangers and the guides that are like.
But it was about 10 years ago.
Into that,
but watch them explain it in vivid detail. And they're like, well, if you're coming to see this, you want to hear it done right. This is how you do it.
Yeah.
And if you go to the National Civil War Museum up in Harrisburg, our good friends up there, right?
Yeah.
They've got a fantastic demonstration on amputations and Civil War operation. And it's gruesome, it's bloody, and it's nasty. But you want to get a good flavor for it, then check it out.
Yep. Oh, hey, Bill Etzkorn's on here. Hey, Bill.
Hey, what's going on, Bill?
Cindy loves all the stories and pictures of the medical stuff. Nurses are crazy. Yeah, I really admire the nurses for what they had.
There's a really good Facebook page. I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but it's like Civil War nurses, and I follow them, and you can read it. And I stumbled into them at the beer garden one night. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, check out this Facebook page. It talks a lot of the nurse stories, and if you're into nurse stuff, I can find and put it on here somewhere, but I'm blank on the name of it. But it's Civil War nurses, and it's got some like flowery title to it. But I'll have to find it. But those stories, we talk about the generals coming back, to speak. A nurse was a rock star after the war. If the soldiers found out you were a nurse, you were God on earth, and justifiably so. Not just the Dorothea Dix and Clara Barton people, but the rank and file nurses. Because that's a bad existence. That is, and thank God for them though. I've yet to see a really, really good, real good book on Civil War nurses that captures it, because the stories are just, you want to talk about yeoman. There was a TV show,
Mercy Street,
the eye candy show, right? Where it kind of captured a little bit of that, but if you read Barton's letters and some of the stuff, talking about bullets going through her dress while she's helping people out, it's just, they're an unsung story. These people are.
Yeah, Paul just said stumbled at the beer garden. Isn't that how you're supposed to walk in a beer garden?
Yeah, beer garden's a good one. That's a good one right there. The Pilgaroo, the new one, is really good.
Yeah, Pilgaroo is really cool. Miranda mentions just about Franklin Carnton had a room that used for amputations, and the floor is super dark from the blood soaked into the hardwood floors.
Well, we have a friend of ours who has a house. Our friend Moody, right? Yeah. Our friend Bill. He has a house down Chambersburg Pike. If you know the area, just right before Knoxland, right for the first shot marker, the 8th Illinois. He had a Civil War house. He still does, but he rents it. But on his stairs going up to the bedrooms, you can see the blood stains and the fingers. The guys had their fingers sitting on the waiting to go up there.
Yeah.
And you could see like literally 5 fingers of the bloody hands on the floor go up the stairs. That was pretty cool. That was creepy as hell, but And the room I slept in was the amputation room area. So I had
Wow.
many a Mr. Marble situation that night.
My friend Laura has a Civil War house, and there's in Sharpsburg, and there's like blood on the floor in one
Yeah.
part of it because the soldiers were in there after the Battle of Antietam. So it's cool that you can still, I mean, it's cool, kind of freaky that you can still see this stuff, like that is there. But it makes it
Well,
more
was
real.
well,
It
wasn't
makes
that
it
long
real.
ago? Wasn't that
No,
long ago?
but it definitely, it's like, okay, these guys aren't just like dots on a map moving around.
There's a house. There's a house in Winchester. It's actually a Rev War house where you could see a Revolutionary War soldier
Yeah.
blood. George
Wow.
Washington's old headquarters down there. You can go. You can take that tour,
Wow.
and you can see the blood on the floor there.
That's cool.
If you're from Virginia, you've gone there for every school field trip in your entire life. You know what I'm talking about. But that's but it's pretty cool if you've been there before.
No, that's really, really cool.
Mhm.
Oh, Jen Rolling's on here. Hey, Jen.
Hey, what's going on, Jen?
Mm.
That was fun when they were in Gettysburg
Yeah.
a few months ago. Was
That was like in July. It's so long ago now.
time flies. It just goes so fast now.
Yeah. No, that anniversary weekend was fun at Fourscore and all that. And we'll be back there in about a week.
Be there next week, Mayor.
Yeah.
Back in town. We'll be there from next Tuesday all the way until January 6th. Within 3 full weeks in Gettysburg. I'm so looking forward to that. That'll be a good time.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Gettysburg at Christmas time. And yeah, our next, as we said, our next episode is going to be about Hiram Granberry. So we're going to be looking at another general, kind of one that's a little bit lower down than, say, like a Claiborne or a Gordon or whatever. But
he tells an important story.
Yep.
He does.
Well, not just that, not just his story as a soldier, but the story of him as like his marriage to Fanny. I think her last name was Sims. Fanny.
Yep,
Sims. Yeah, and just how tragic that was, and that he lost her in like 1863 from what would be now ovarian cancer. And she was only like, I think 28 when she died. Like, she was really young.
It's funny. We'll go into Boston, and most people say, "What was that? Was that building here in the Rev War? Was that?" You go. Your response is, "Did Granberry see that building? Would he have seen that building?"
Well, that's what I wondered.
I know, but it's just funny the way you'll do that. You'll point at an old building, and you'll say, "Did Granberry would have seen that building?" It's just funny.
Well, that's how I people think. Like
I know, but it's just funny.
And I wonder if Fanny saw it too. I wonder if she, wandered around the common. I wonder, I wonder if she saw all that stuff, and if he saw all of it. He definitely saw that big tower thing as you come to the harbor, the exchange,
the customs house.
Yeah, the customs house. Yeah.
Yeah, he would have seen that.
Yeah. See, that's really cool. Like, that stuff I love, because I love to know how it would have looked, what they would have seen. And it's cool to think like, oh, I'm looking at the same stuff they did.
No, I'm totally with you. I think it's fascinating and that's what's great about some of the battlefields. Is you look at the Antietam's of the world, the Chickamaugas of the world, or parts of the Gettysburgs of the world. You can sit there and look at you can read the soldier diaries about how we came upon this little dip in the ground before we charging forward. You could find that same exact dip, little things like that, sunken road, or talking about Kemper's guys at Gettysburg, or talking about maybe Hood's guys at Chickamauga. And you read some of the stories, and you can literally walk in their footsteps. Yeah. That's what's great about going to the battlefields this time of year. We can go see the Lamb Willard Monument again. We go see that again because
we didn't see it the first time. We never found it. Remember?
No, because it was too wet. It was you couldn't get around it. But this time of year, you can walk right to it. And so, because you can't, a lot of places, a lot of these battlefields, specifically, like Chickamauga, unless the weather is on your side, you can't go. But in Gettysburg or in Antietam, you get the bug situation, you get the tick situation. So I love to walk from the Texas Memorial at Gettysburg all the way to the Triangular Fields.
Yeah.
And because of snakes, you can't do it in the summertime. But this time of year, you can do it. You can do it. So we'll look at that stuff.
Frank wonders what position did he play with baseball. I said he probably would have been a pitcher because he's tall.
I don't know. Well, it's fun because they talk, because if you've been to Fort Warren, it's like a lot of it's kind of like Fort McHenry in Baltimore. We have this big parade ground in the middle, but the Boston one is much bigger and it's all grass. And they talked about how he specifically, other guys will go out there and they play baseball. And he was obviously very athletic and very spry. And it was mostly an officer prison, so it wasn't like you had a lot of hard work to do. They just basically let them do what they wanted. They took care of them. And I'll always give those Union captors, those jailers credit. When they found out that Fanny had the cancer,
Yeah.
they let him go. They didn't make him stay there. Once they found out, they released him. They said, okay, you've been paroled, but you haven't been exchanged yet, but we're just going to let you go now because we understand the situation.
Yeah.
And those stories don't get told enough. So that's why it's nice to hear that too.
Yeah, because it's a sad story, admittedly. But they were both like, they were described as being very, very close. They were definitely each other's best friends, and just like, it's just sad. And I don't think he was the same after she died.
Yeah.
That he had to go back and he just threw himself into the army. And I think maybe I sometimes wonder if that is one of the reasons why he was such a hard fighter, is it took his mind off of it.
I don't know if he had to help her stumble out of the Sun Tavern. If he had to do that with old Fanny.
I know.
Well, what do we get ready to jump off? It's 11:45. Time flies. It's Sunday. People are jumping off. So yeah. If we're down there, when we're down there, everybody's around. We'll reach out.
Lynn just said she's going to try and catch up with us down there.
Yeah, we'll be there for a while. I know it's Christmas and New Year's, but we're going to be down there for a while. So that'll be cool to get down there and spend a lot of time down there. And catch up. So yeah, all right. So we have that episode next week. We'll get that recorded probably Thursday night.
Yeah.
After yet another Christmas party. We'll do that one. And then
well, I'm not going to your work Christmas party.
No, this is gonna be merry free. I have fun of this one. A good time. No, it'll be good. So yeah, so we'll get that recorded. We'll get down there. We'll try to do a live next weekend if we can. Probably would be Saturday, right?
Yeah, before we go to Boston.
Yeah. Next weekend is the anniversary, like I mentioned, the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party, and I get to participate in it.
Yeah,
I get to walk from South Meeting House in Boston right to Griffin's Wharf, where it was done at the same exact moment that they. I'm not going to dress up like a Native American though, like they did.
They dressed up as Native Americans.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think anybody's gonna be doing that this year. But it's a good way to make Boston.com. So I'm gonna avoid that. Wow. But they did that. But we'll get to do that next weekend. We'll get to there's a big weekend here in the city for the anniversary, the 250th of the Boston Tea Party. So we'll get to participate in that. So that'll be a good time. All right. So off we go. Everybody have a great rest of the weekend. Hopefully your football team wins today, unless of course you root for the Bills or the Eagles. Actually, I have nothing against the Eagles. Actually, I'm just saying that they're playing the Cowboys today.
Wow. Who
the hell do you root for in that one, man? That's when you root for a meteor to hit the stadium. It doesn't matter. Anyway,
everybody's saying like Merry Christmas and
well, we'll talk to you.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great Christmas. Have a great holiday. Whatever. Yeah, whatever you choose to celebrate, definitely do that. And we'll definitely try to do this again. But if for some reason we don't catch up with you, have a safe one. Hope Santa treats you well. And hopefully you can finish the year strong.
We probably will do a live from Gettysburg.
No, we will. We'll do it next weekend. We'll do a couple from Gettysburg. We'll pop on, but we'll schedule one. But if you're in town between then and New Year's, the week after, hit us up. We're always up for Fourscore. That's for damn sure.
Or the Mine.
We're gonna do the Mine New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
the Mine. They do a thing in Gettysburg New Year's Eve where they count down and they have a Lincoln hat that falls. So we'll do that. Yeah. But I know the Mine is open that night, so 100% will be at the Mine. 100%.
Oh yeah, that'll be awesome.
All right, guys, have a great Christmas. If we don't talk to you, have a great holiday. Well, I'm sure we'll talk to you all soon. And we'll do Granbury, and we'll talk to you on the other side.
Yeah. See you guys later.